Well, uh, I do appreciate you coming on. Definitely a lot of fun. The album is great.
Thank you.
I definitely you have it up there, probably with my top two or three albums that you've done.
What's
And
what's your favorite Teramaze album?
so it would probably be somewhere between this album, um, Her Halo, or Esoteric Symbolism. Those three albums. And it's weird because you know what I mentioned about this new album? The last three songs at Esoteric are also my favorite songs on that album.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
Well,
think the very
very
and I think
spiritual.
right, and I think the guitar solos in the very last song are still probably some of my favorite solos I've ever heard you play. In all seriousness,
On
I
what song?
In vitro.
Ah, yeah, yeah. We're
But
trying to learn that stuff now. Yeah,
but I think I like the mix. Like when I think of this album and Her Halo, I like the mix of the heaviness and a lot of the more progressive melodic stuff that you've done. Over say some of the heavier albums like maybe Anadonia, which is more kind of straightforward, for example. So I think that when you have this kind of mix between it, I think because I don't know what to expect from the record.
yeah, yeah.
Probably the best way. It's probably the best way to really put it. I don't know what to expect. Look, when I heard this album and I'm listening to it, I didn't know what to expect from it.
Yeah.
And parts of it reminded me of Her Halo, parts of it did not.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I liked about it.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's good. Good to know.
It had
I
that
used,
same vibe
yeah,
with some of the songs, but at the same time, it wasn't like a clone, and it wasn't like a record that I would say, man, it just copied Her Halo. It's kind of like it wasn't to the point where I was like, like you listen to an AC/DC album, you've heard all of them, right? It's not like that. I was happy where I could hear something that was similar, but at the same time, it was a lot different. The last song in the album, the long song in the album, is a lot different, in my opinion, than a lot of the stuff you've done. That's just my opinion.
yeah, interesting. Yeah,
Whereas, and then you go from this heavy Her Halo kind of vibe song and Standing Ovation, and then you go to something completely different with Hands Are Tied, and then you go right into this last long kind of epic song. I think for me, that made the record for me.
interesting. That's
But
good. Yeah,
but it would be somewhere between those three records, to be
yeah,
honest with you. Esoteric was the second album I had heard from you guys. I think I heard Anadonia and that one around the same time. It was about the time I got into the band.
yeah.
And Her Halo, obviously, Out of Subconscious is probably one of my favorite songs you've ever written. But I'll be honest with you, these last three tracks on this new album are right up there with it. Probably three of my favorite tracks you've ever done. So it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. It depends on the day. I actually had to go back and listen because I'm going to record a review of the album probably next week. But I actually had to go back and listen. Usually I listen to a band's discography to get some perspective, to kind of go back, unless it's like Iron Maiden or somebody like that where I've heard the albums a million times. But I went back to listen to all of the other albums, and it gives me a little bit of a perspective of like, okay, how do I view this? Right. And I came to the conclusion, and judging by the amount of plays I've had looking in my phone or looking on a computer when I'm listening to it while I'm doing work, I came to the conclusion that I like this album, probably in my top two or three.
Yeah, cool.
And that's how I would put it. I know it's a kind of a long-winded answer.
No, I don't usually ask many people, but I thought, I know you've known the band for a while, and it's like
Yeah.
it's interesting. To suppose I hear it instead of looking a message or something. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
So,
cool.
but
I mean,
it's kind of like I always look at things for perspective, because sometimes I could go back to Esoteric and have this memory of really loving the record, and maybe I don't like it as much. Maybe I like this album and the last three albums maybe better, right? But I always go back to get perspective on it, listen to this stuff again, get it back in my mind. That way I can go and do a review and think, okay, I can go back and maybe reference it if I want to, right? And kind of give people my perspective of how I viewed the band over the years. And that's kind of how I try to do reviews. The thing is, a lot of people will do reviews where they'll go and they'll start dissecting songs. I don't do that, dude. Like that, most people don't care about that. I care about how do I feel about this record? What songs do I like? What does it remind me of? And what I'll do is I'll say, hey, I like this album and this album by this band. They're my favorites.
Yeah.
That usually gives people a perspective of where I'm coming from, right? Like if I
Actually,
go, you know,
yeah, I'd actually say that Eli is probably in between a combination of Halo and Esoteric. It's actually in there a bit, especially the song, Madam Roma. It's probably a little bit heavier, the more heavier song on Eli. I kind of felt like, oh, this is a little bit something like Esoteric, had the riffs in there and stuff. So that just happens randomly. But so, yeah, to me, Esoteric is still probably one of our best albums.
Yeah, totally agree, man. I think that is the album that really made me love the band. I think because I try not to be that, oh my God, they haven't done anything as good as this since then. I try not to, like, some people will like not really give a new album by a band a chance and are stuck on one record. That happens a lot. I try to look at everything with a pretty open mind on stuff. And I mean, like I said, Esoteric, man, was like the standard for me. And then her Halo came out, which I liked better. And it's kind of like, I listen to a new album and kind of give it a chance. I let it grow on me after a while. I've been listening to the album probably for easily, I mean, it's June now, for probably a month and a half pretty intently. And then I don't like to review things right away because some of my favorite records, I didn't like them at first.
Yeah.
I just, how it happens. So I give it some time and then I'm like, okay, I really don't like this, or I really do like this, or and I've done reviews so quickly sometimes in the past, and then I go back like 2 weeks later, I was stupid. Why the hell did I do that? Yeah, so I like to give it some time, and then if it's like a live album or something like that, that's a little bit different. But I like to give it some time before I review it, and that's really where I'm at with a lot of albums. That's why people are like, man, why didn't you review this album? I just got the full promo like 2 days ago.
I won't know if I like this album for another year.
I mean, it could, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say that long for me, but I got to give it at least a week or two of like constantly listening to it.
Yeah, I think especially this style of music, because there's a lot in there. There's just a lot in, that's the sort of fun of this style of music. Put a lot in there, but try to make it still sound like it makes sense.
Yeah.
But someone that is not into progressive music can still listen to it. That's actually that's consciously what I try to do.
Yeah.
Is try to make the melodies that like anyone could sort of listen to. My mum likes it. She's not a progressive. You know what I mean? It's like, she's like the melodies. I'm like, okay, so it's still.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the cover for Esoteric right now, and and I'm thinking, with the top like 3 albums by you, it just really depends on the day for those 3 records. But I could tell you, I could separate these 3 albums from the other ones as far as how much I like them.
Yeah.
So it's like probably it's easily top 3. I probably would lean on her Halo maybe a little bit more, but I'd probably have this one at 2 or, probably at 2 or 3. It's really hard for me to gauge.
Cool.
I'll know more. I'll have more of a thought on that in a week when I do it, but it's close. I would probably say it's right on par with Esoteric in my opinion, and her Halo I like just slightly better.
It's funny. The weirdest thing happened, and I couldn't make this happen even if I tried. The length of Eli is the exact same length as her Halo to the second. It's so weird, man. I thought I was daydreaming it when I looked at I went to do the master, and it was like 56:35, and I'm like, that sounds familiar.
That is crazy, dude.
Yeah, man.
And I just opened up iTunes and I'm looking at it because I have the songs in my computer. And you were right. 8 songs, 57 minutes for both of the albums.
Oh yeah, it's exactly 56:35. They must have just rounded it off. But
Yeah.
I screenshot it and sent it to the guys, and I'm like, there's no way I could have done this. You know, I mean, there's no way that I've moved the songs. It wouldn't make any difference. The songs are at the length that they are. There's barely even any time in between the songs because I wanted them all to flow. And I was just laughing. I was like, I could not make that happen even if I tried. I don't know why, but maybe we just do things the same. We're constantly in it like a loop. That's kind of what
Have you posted it as a fun fact yet? You should.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I don't think people believe me, but I'm like, I couldn't, not that I'd even try to make that happen because it's like, the music would probably suffer if I'm trying to make it, you know what I mean? So it's so weird, but here we are trying to make an album feel like her Halo. It's the exact same length. I'm like, that's just.
And what's
weird.
funny is two of the songs on Eli are like intros.
Yeah.
Like a minute long. It just has longer songs. Whereas like her Halo, you have a lot of 4 and 5 minute songs on that album.
Yeah. The intros had to be put as songs because I didn't want people to have to fast forward the intros, but the intros made sense to the concept. So I'm like, well, we'll just put them as songs. But I'm like, they're not. They're just bits of music. You know what I mean? They're like, but then the songs would have been longer if I joined them together. It still would have been the same length, but that's a fun fact. I was going to delete it, and it's the same length.
that is cool, man. Well, hey, I enjoyed having you on the show. That's a pretty fun fact. But definitely another great record. Probably easily one of the best albums you've put out. As we just talked to the last 5-10 minutes about. Again, thanks for coming on. It was great. I'll definitely let you know when I put the interview up, and congrats on another great record, dude. I can't wait. I'm like now hearing you talk about the next album, not sounding like this. I'm really eager to hear it.
Sounds nothing like it.
Assuming you use those songs that don't come up with better ideas.
I'm using them. There's a lot there, but I did find an old song that I like now and we're using, but it's all brand new. It's all new. It was all written through the production of Eli.
Gotcha, man. Well, hey, thanks for coming on. It was awesome.
I appreciate it.